Hello and welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Branislav Berec and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, the series of videos designed to teach how to play various board games. Today, we're going to learn a worker placement game called Terramara from the Quinnet Games. First, assemble these 8 puzzle pieces of the game board. Take these territory tiles with these player count symbols and choose 2 of them which correspond to the current player count. At first, we will set up the game for 4 players, so we will take these 2 tiles. Now place these tiles in the topmost spot of the game board. You can put the remaining 2 homeland tiles back into the box. Then sort out the remaining tiles by their level, indicated by this number, and also sort them up by their type. These are forest and mountain tiles, and these are plains and quarry tiles. Take 2 random tiles from each pile of the level 1 tiles, and again place them randomly in the 3 topmost slots of the game board. Make sure the plains and quarry tiles are in the left column, and the forest and mountain tiles are in the right column. Then repeat the same process for the level 2 and level 3 tiles. You can put all the remaining tiles back into the box. These are worker tiles. As indicated by these icons next to these round numbers, place 2 worker tiles of the same level onto that icon, and then place the round marker on the first space of this round track. Sort these bonus tiles face down by their level, and then place them randomly on the designated spaces along the road, then onto these 2 spots on the level 3 tiles, and also along the river. Keep the leftover tiles nearby, they may be needed in the game. Sort these artifact cards by their level, and then create the draw deck with the level 3 cards at the bottom and the level 1 cards on the top. Place the draw deck next to the game board and draw the first 8 cards face up. Then each player chooses a color and takes the hut card of the same color, then 2 caravans, 1 boat, 1 military token, 4 flags, 1 chieftain, and take 5 explorers. Place all the caravans on the uppermost space of the road, all the military tokens on the first space of the military track, and all ships on the starting space of the river. And finally, take 1 explorer from those 5 starting explorers and place it onto this space next to the river. Randomly select the first player and give them this first player card, which at this time has no effect yet. In 2 or 3 player games, you have to block some of the spaces permanently, and some spaces will be occupied by neutral workers. First, you will have to place these fire tokens. Shuffle these 4 numbered cards and start drawing cards one by one. For each card you draw, take the fire token and place it on one of these small spaces on the tiles in the first row. There are always 4 small spaces in each row, and the card you have drawn indicates which space, counting from the left, will take the fire token. This space is blocked for the rest of the game. Now draw the second card and place the fire token onto this small space in the next row. So in the second row, this is the first space which gets the fire token. After placing the 4th fire token, reshuffle the deck and draw 2 more cards for the 5th and 6th row. After placing the fire tokens, now place the neutral workers. Take all 6 workers of the inactive color, and then starting with the first player and continuing in a clockwise direction, each player will take 1 worker, and again, starting with the first row, that player would place that neutral worker onto any unoccupied space in that first row. It could even be this large space. If you would play a 2-player game, you would have to repeat the process with the second inactive color, placing 1 neutral worker on any unoccupied space, starting with the first row and then continuing downwards. So this is how the board could be set up for a 2-player game. Regardless of the number of players in the game, all military tokens of all colors have to be placed on the first space of the military track. If you want to play with the character cards, randomly choose as many cards as there are players in the game plus 1, and make sure you place them with this young side up. because all cards have the young and the old side, so place them with the young side up. Now, if this is the starting player order, if this is the first player and this is the last player, then starting with the last player and continuing in the reverse order, each player has to choose either the resource card or a character card. So let's say the blue player decides to take this card. Then the green player can also either choose the resource or a character card. So let's say they would choose this one. Then after all players made their first pick, now starting with the starting player and going in the player order, each player has to choose the other type of card. So the yellow player has the character card, now they have to choose the resource card. Let's say this one. Next player in the player order has to do the same, and at the end of this drafting, each player has to have one character card and one resource card. Now each player will take these starting resources and apply the starting bonuses, but do not apply character bonuses to these starting resources. So in this case, the yellow player can get 2 refined resources, which are placed on the right side of the HUD card as indicated by these icons, and then the yellow player can move his military token by 4 spaces and move 1 caravan by 1 space. You can find the explanation of all the icons on the last page of the rulebook. If this is your first game of Terramara, the authors of the game recommend not to use these character cards, but instead, each player would take 1 raw resource of each type and place it to the left of their HUD card, and the raw resources are the resources in a circle. Each player would also get 1 level 1 worker, move the canoes to the first space of the river instead of the starting space, and the first player in the player order would place their military token on the first space of the military track instead of the starting space. Then the second player in a player order would place their marker onto the second space, and so on and so forth. The game is played in 5 rounds, and in each round, players take turns, starting with the first player and then continuing in a clockwise direction. On your turn, you must send one of the clan members to one of the action spaces on the game board or to your HUD. After that, you can create or reserve one of the artifacts. You have to use all of your available workers and a chieftain every round, and once you use all of them, you have to pass and your round is over. Each action space can contain maximum 2 workers, and those workers must be of a different color. If there's a chieftain on the action space, no other worker or chieftain can be placed onto that space. If the action space has this restriction icon, only 1 clan member can be sent to such space. Workers, or they're also called explorers, can be sent to any action space on the board, not just the action space which is related to the current round. However, if they are placed on the action spaces from the future rounds, they will only come back at the end of that round. Chieftains, these larger meeples, can only be placed on any action space of the current round or any action spaces above the current round. They can never be sent to future action spaces. If you send an explorer to an action space with another explorer, your military strength has to be higher than the military strength of that player. Not equal, it has to be higher. Immediately after placing the explorer on that action space, reduce your military by 1. Only then you can perform the action. If you send a chieftain to an action space with another explorer, your military strength is not important. At the end of the round, return all the clan members back to their owners, except for those which are on future action spaces. If you have any clan members on your HUD, return them to your supply as well. Then flip the current round territory tiles, which contain new action spaces and also these outposts. Now we will go through the action spaces available in the game. When you place your clan member onto this action space which is called Hire a Worker, you can get the worker tile of the current round. So in the first round, you would take this level 1 worker tile and place it somewhere next to your HUD. If this was the third round, you would get the level 2 worker tile, and so on and so forth. Worker tiles allow you to refine resources, which means turn these raw resources into their refined form. There are 4 types of resources in the game, and they are also indicated on the HUD card, and this is the raw form and this is the refined form. Anytime on your turn, you can turn this worker tile 90 degrees to indicate that you have used that tile this round, and refined up to this number of resources from their raw form into their refined form. This action is completely free. So with the level 2 workers, you can refine 2 resources. You can use each worker tile only once per round, and in case you use the tile and you have fewer resources to refine than the level of the worker, refine as many resources as you can, and the excess capacity is lost. When you send a clan member to this action space, you can increase your military by 1, and this icon indicates that you can move your canoe by 1 space. Military is required to place explorers on the same action space occupied by another explorers, and also affects this raid action, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Anytime you lose military, you have to move back. If you reach the last space on the military track, and you would have to gain more military, gain victory points instead. Then at the end of the game, player with the highest military strength will get 8 victory points, the second player would get 5 victory points, and the third player would score 2 victory points. When you gain culture, you move your canoe along the river. Culture can never be lost. The culture determines how many artifact cards are available to you when you craft or reserve artifacts. The yellow player in this example, as indicated by this line, would have these 4 cards available. So the further you move along the river, more cards are available. In addition, when you reach this space on the river, you can start reserving the artifacts, not just crafting. I'll talk about that in a minute. When you reach this space, and also this one and this one, you can immediately apply the effects of those bonus tokens. When you reach this space, you gain another explorer of your color. And when you use this space, when reserving artifacts, you can pay 1 fewer resource. Similar to military track, when you reach the last space of the track and you would have to gain more culture, gain more victory points instead. When you take this travel action, this number inside the wheel indicates how many spaces you can move with your caravans. In this example, you can either move 1 caravan 2 spaces, or both caravans can move 1 space. When you move the caravan, you can either move it to the Crossroads, or you can move it to the bonus tile. Similarly, when you are on the Crossroads, you can move it to the bonus tile with the outpost in case that outpost is already available. You would not be able to move your caravan to this place because there's no outpost yet. When you move the caravan to the bonus tile, use that effect immediately, but keep the tile in the place. Each space on the road can be occupied by any number of caravans, so with 2 movement points available, you can actually use the tile and its effect with both of your caravans during the same turn. When you reach the outpost space with one of your caravans, place one of your flags onto that space, and at the end of the game, you will score victory points based on the condition depicted next to this outpost space. Each player can have maximum 1 flag on each outpost space. When you reach the last space on the road, place your caravan onto the empty space with the highest value of victory points. You will get these victory points at the end of the game. Victory points are awarded to the caravans, so one player can have both caravans on these scoring positions, and these 3 victory points are awarded to any caravan that reaches the last space of the road. When you take this raid action, first, immediately lose 1 military. Then you will perform the raid, and each other player will have to give you a certain number of resources. That number depends on these ratios, and these ratios depend on the power level of your military, which is compared to the power level of your opponents. The military track is split into 4 levels. This is the first level, and it starts with this shield symbol. This is the second level, which starts on the space with this symbol. This is the third level, again starting on the space with this symbol. And the fourth level starts here and continues to the end of the track. Now, when performing the raid action, the player who performs this action compares their military strength with the military strength of their opponents. Since the blue player is in the third level of the military track, we will only look at the ratios which correspond to this third level. The yellow player is in the second level, which starts with this symbol, so looking at this symbol over here, the blue player will take 1 resource for every 4 resources this yellow player has in their possession. If the yellow player would have 7 resources in total, they would lose 1 resource, and it's the yellow player who decides which resource to give away to the blue player. If the yellow player would have 9 resources in total, with the ratio 1 to 4, the yellow player has to lose 2 resources, and again, they decide which resources they will give to the blue player. Now, since the green player is in the first level of the military track, the blue player would take 1 resource for every 3 resources of the green player. If the situation would look like this, the blue player would use these ratios for their raid action, so they will get 1 resource for every 5 resources from the red player. Then they would only get 1 resource for every 6 resources of the yellow player, and they would only get 1 resource for every 7 resources of the green player. When you take the first player action, take this first player card and immediately apply these bonuses. The first player, which is the player who actually took the card, will take 1 movement, second player has no bonus, third player gets 1 culture, and the fourth player gets 2 military. This only happens during the round 1 to 4. At the start of the 5th round, flip this card to the other side, and the player who takes the first player action can take one of these effects, so either 2 movement points, 2 military strength, or 2 culture. There is no effect or no bonus to other players. When you send a clan member to the territory tiles, to any of these action spaces, you can either gain resources, you can transform or trade resources, you can get victory points, culture, you can get military, or you can get these 2 warriors. All the icons on the action spaces are very easy to understand, and if you would have any questions, you can find the explanation of all these icons on the last page of the rulebook. At the end of each round, when you flip the territory tiles, a new type of action is revealed. Basically, the entire tile is 1 action and all the standard rules apply to this action space. However, there's 1 additional rule. Player can only take this action if both of their caravans have reached the crossroad corresponding to this round number. So the yellow player is the only player who can take this action and use its effect, because both yellow caravans have already reached this crossroad. However, even though this action space is also now available, no player has reached this crossroad space with both of their caravans, which means no player can use this action space at this moment. These 2 small action spaces are special action spaces that belong to the 5th round. Unlike the regular action spaces of the 5th round, these special action spaces are totally unavailable until the start of the 5th round. Players can send their clan members to these action spaces only when they meet this condition. So in this example, the level of the worker tiles of the yellow player would have to sum up to 5 or more. In this example, the player would have to reach this space on the military track. Obviously, they could also exceed that space. And finally, you can take an action on your hut. Your hut can contain any number of your clan members, and if you take an action with your explorer or a chieftain on your hut, you can either convert 1 raw resource into a refined resource, or you can change 1 type of raw resource into another type of a raw resource. After you take an action, you may reserve or create artifacts. You can only create or reserve it. You cannot do both. There are 3 levels of artifacts, level 1, 2 and 3. They are recognizable by their back, and you can also recognize them when they're face up by their frame. There are 4 types of artifacts, recognizable by their symbol and also by the color of the background behind the special ability, and they are pottery, clothing, weaponry, and tools. These kind of artifacts count as any type of the artifact. All artifacts provide victory points at the end of the game, and in addition to the victory points, they provide special abilities. These are permanent effects, these are one-time effects. These effects can be used once per round when there's a player's turn, and the artifacts with this symbol score a certain number of victory points at the end of the game. When you decide to create an artifact, choose a card which is available to you. That is determined by the position of your canoe, and this line determines which cards are available to you at the moment. After choosing the card, place it into your player area, pay the indicated costs by returning the resources back to the general supply, and gain the benefits. In this case, it would be immediately 2 travel points and 2 culture points. After taking the card, slide all the cards to the left, filling the empty spaces, and then throw the new card from the top of the deck. If you reach this space on the river, instead of creating the artifact, you can reserve the artifact. Again, take your chosen card, but this time place it into your area face down. No one else can create or reserve this card. At any time during the game, you can have maximum 1 card in reserve. On your subsequent turns, you can create other artifacts, even though you still have 1 artifact in reserve. Then instead of creating the artifacts from the supply, if you have any reserved artifact, you can create that artifact, but obviously you have to pay the required resources. At the end of the current round, return all the clan members to their owners, except for those on future action spaces. Then flip the 2 territory tiles of the round which has been finished, remove any unclaimed worker tiles of the current round back into the box, and move the round marker to the next round. Rotate all the worker tiles back into the upright position, and also do the same with the artifacts which can only be used once per round. Now, at the start of the second round, as this symbol indicates, remove all the level 1 artifact cards from the deck. So, starting with the second round, any new cards drawn from the deck will be level 2 cards. Now, at the start of the third round, remove all the level 1 artifact cards from the display. You can identify the level of the card by the different frames, so take all the level 1 cards and remove them from the game, then slide the existing cards to the left and refill the display with the level 2 cards from the top of the deck. At the start of the fourth round, you would actually repeat the same process, remove all the level 2 artifact cards from the deck, and at the start of the fifth round, remove all the level 2 artifact cards from the display. So in the fifth round, you will only have level 3 artifact cards available. And then, after the end of the fifth round, the game will be over. To calculate the final scores, use the score pad. First, sum up all the victory point tokens you have collected over the course of the game. Then count up all the victory points depicted on each artifact card. Add the victory points from the artifact cards with these endgame scoring conditions. Then add the victory points for the military track and for the road. Then award victory points for the outposts. Then if you have a card in reserve at the end of the game, you lose 5 victory points. And finally, for each raw resource you get half of the victory point, and for each refined resource you get 1 victory point. The player with the most points is the winner. When you play with the character cards, you always start with this young side up. Character cards provide this immediate bonus at the start of the game, and then this is the permanent bonus for the rest of the game. Only at the start of the round, at the start of any round, before you send out any of your clan members, you can decide to flip this card to the adult side, and this is a permanent change. You can never go back to the young side. You lose the ability of the young side, however, you get new ability from the adult side. Usually, this ability provides victory points. When you send an explorer to the action space with these purple warriors, you can take those warriors and you have to use them in the current round. At the end of the round, you will return them back to the general supply. As you can see, these are larger meeples, so they act like chieftains. However, there are two small exceptions. Since they have a different color, you can send them to the same space as your own explorers. And second, even though they act like chieftains, any abilities that would refer to chieftains don't apply to these warriors. In a 2 or 3 player games, these neutral meeples already occupy the action spaces. At the start of each round, draw one of these neutral cards for each neutral player and move the military token of that neutral player by that many spaces forward. So in a 2-player game, draw another card for the second neutral player and move the second military token by that many spaces. So the neutral workers have the military strength determined by their military token, and at the end of the game, these neutral military tokens would also count towards the endgame scoring of the military track. At the end of the round, and only in a 2-player game, when you flip the territory tiles, place the restriction token onto the Crossroad action. So that's it, that's how you play Terramara. If you would have any questions or comments, please put them into the comment sections below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you like the show, please subscribe. My name is Branislav Berec, you've been watching Game in a Nutshell, and hope to see you next time.